It's Monday, and that so happens to be the day that I like to talk about monsters. Except when we did this recording, it was actually a Saturday. So, welcome to this very special episode of Monster Mondays. I am Geoff Arbuckle. I am also the co-host of the Film Seizure Podcast that you can hear each Wednesday morning at filmseizure.com with my co-hosts Jason Oliver and Chuck Moore. But this was recorded on April 27th. It was a live podcast that was done. So to kind of set the background of what you're going to be hearing for the next hour or so. April 26th, or the weekend of April 26th, was PopCon weekend here in Indianapolis. Over the last couple of years, Film Seizure has had a presence at PopCon over a couple of different ways. The first was in 2022. In June of 2022, we did our Goonies Live episode there on the podcast stage. I think we had a pretty good time doing that. It was fun to do that. Surprisingly, not as stressful or as worrisome as I thought it might be, but it was a good time. And then last year, in 2023, August of 2023, not only did Film Seizure win 2 PopCon Podcast Awards, but we also, I was also invited by Brandon Peters, the host of the Brandon Peters Show, to participate in a live Saturday morning podcast where we talked about the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. That you can hear on his site and on his YouTube. I'll link it in the on the website or in the description of this, wherever it is that you're listening to this. But in and, you know, and so I kind of got to thinking, it's like, well, I want to do something for 2024. It was kind of, ideas were kind of bandied about. Was it going to be a Film Seizure sort of thing? Was it going to be a Monster Monday sort of thing? Or was it going to be both Film Seizure and Monster Mondays? And maybe do like a funny thing where I say something like, oh, you know, it's Monday and that so happens to be the day that I like to talk about monsters, even on a Sunday or something like that. But what I decided to do was to kind of just ask Brandon to, kind of do another anniversary style show. So I came up with the idea of what you're about to listen to, which was a celebration of Godzilla in his 70th anniversary. And it was really kind of cool because, I'm terrible sometimes with naming things. I just named it For the Love of Godzilla, like, For the Love of God. Yeah, you get it. But, it was really kind of cool because, this was something I also wanted to kind of talk a little bit about Godzilla, just kind of, off the cuff, just talk about the creature that is, a creature that I think is getting its due finally, for being so kind of present in a lot of people, particularly my age and younger, in our lives, growing up and watching it on TV and so on. But I also wanted to make sure that other people also got the opportunity to talk about the character as well and talk about their favorite monsters or their favorite movie or whatever it was. And so we had a few people to be able to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of the way. We're going to you're going to hear Brandon come in and say that we are rolling on a news show. It was at 4:00 on Saturday, April 27th, 2024, at the live PopCon podcast stage. So we're going to do that. And then I'll come back in at the end to kind of do the regular typical cleanup stuff. So enjoy this very special sort of Monster Mondays, sort of not Monster Mondays, just a celebration of Godzilla and the For the Love of Godzilla live podcast that I did at PopCon Indy this past month. So enjoy.
Welcome back to the live podcast stage. I am your host, Brandon Peters. And we are having a nice, full, fun day of podcasts here at PopCon 2024. I appreciate any and everyone who's at least taken in your ears as you walk by or sat down for a bit for any of the podcasts. That means the world. You do not believe it. So, our next podcast I'm going to be on, but Geoff Arbuckle here of Film Seizure is going to lead the charge as we celebrate 70 years of Godzilla with For the Love of Godzilla. And so, Geoff, I'll let you take the lead.
All right. Good?
Yeah.
Did you hit record?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
We're 51 seconds into the 2, 3, 4, into the recording.
All right. Hello, everybody, and hello, PopCon. My name is Geoff Arbuckle. I am the host of co-host of Film Seizure that you can listen to every Wednesday morning at filmseizure.com. My two co-hosts, unfortunately, could not be here this weekend, but I am here to do this because I also do, on Monday afternoons at filmseizure.com, Monster Mondays. And as it turns out, Godzilla has shown up a few times. Brandon, would you believe it?
Okay, a few times is a bit much, but you know.
Yeah, a few
all right.
Maybe like 20.
So you're not all the way done.
No, not all the way done. Almost there. But no, yeah. So I want to thank Brandon Peters of the Brandon Peters Show to come and help out here as we celebrate the Big G himself, who turns 70 here in just a few months.
Right. I want to ask, who came for this podcast today?
Hey.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Just curious who the Godzilla fans are in here.
Well, that would be everyone.
Everyone.
So, yeah, and this is, let's face it, we're kind of eating pretty good here as Godzilla fans this year. I mean, we've had, over the course of the last, 6 months, we've had Godzilla -1.
Correct.
We've had Monarch Legacy of Monsters. We've had Godzilla X Kong.
Yep.
And an Academy Award.
Yeah. I said that Godzilla had his Spielberg moment because he had an Academy Award film, which Spielberg had the Post years ago, and Godzilla had -1. And then months later, Spielberg had a spectacle blockbuster in Ready Player One, and here's Godzilla with a spectacle blockbuster in Godzilla X Kong.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, this is about more than just the last 6 or 7 months.
Right.
It's about 70 years of Godzilla. And, and I kind of wanted to start things off a little bit with, just kind of taking it all the way back to the beginning.
Right.
And, that comes from producer Tomoyuki Tanaka. And he was actually flying to Jakarta in Indonesia with the plans and trying to suss out some production plans for a completely different movie.
Okay.
And all of that ended up failing. So on the flight back to Japan, he thought, well, let's do something different. He had seen the 1953 movie, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Has anybody seen that? Yeah.
Big Fathoms fan here. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so, and that's kind of a classic, I believe that's Ray Harryhausen.
Yeah, I think so.
And it was, the big monster, rampaging through the city. And he thought, that's kind of an interesting idea. I think we got something there that we can do the effects for and do something kind of interesting with that. But then he kind of mixed it in with this other story about a fishing boat whose crew ended up getting contaminated from the fallout of the Bikini Atoll nuclear test. So it's like, well, nuclear radiation, we all know, creates giant things. I mean, if I've learned anything from pop culture.
My grandparents had they had to deal with it too,
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way things go.
Happens.
Exactly. So basically then it just went into, well, how do we make this work? And it was actually kind of lucky that things kind of worked out the way it was, because initially they were kind of thinking it should be a stop motion monster, but let's be honest, we love the guy in the suit.
Big rubber suit rules.
Yeah, I mean, it's you don't stop motion and Godzilla would not. I don't think that would be right. I don't think that would look right.
Yeah.
It certainly would. It certainly would change some of the attitude of those '60s movies.
Yeah, and some of the ambition might not have been able to pull off, or I don't know.
Yeah,
because some of them would have, like Destroy All Monsters, all stop motion. That would have been
a mess.
Tough.
Yeah. But yeah, and it was Akira Watanabe who actually designed the creature with Taizo Toshimitsu. Mm-hmm. I'm terrible with Japanese names.
I once on my podcast did a marathon of Godzilla episodes, and I read the director and writer and cast of those, and I'm sitting here trying to pronounce them, and I'm just like, I am committing a crime on people's names every week for like 14 weeks.
Right. But they were working under the supervision of another really, really important figure in Japanese tokusatsu type productions and stuff. And that's Eiji Tsuburaya. Now, Tsuburaya would create Ultraman. And the reason why a lot of the early creatures, particularly in Ultra Q, look like Godzilla creations or Godzilla monsters is because he was basically, come on in to Toho's monster warehouse and take what you want. You help create all these, and probably without that, Ultraman wouldn't still be going today either.
Wow.
So, yeah, but Godzilla would end up on screen for the first time in Nagoya on October 27, 1954. 1 week later, the rest of Japan saw him, and that is the official, Godzilla Day is always November 3rd. That's why you get to see all those old ones on the screen around that time as well. And, and it's kind of funny because, like, that first movie is pretty dark.
Yeah, no, it's a very serious movie meant to be watched in a more serious tone.
Yeah, even the one where it got Americanized and they brought it over as with Raymond Burr and all of it, it's still a pretty heavy drama.
Right. I think, is it kind of similar to one of those series where people have the back of their head notion of what a Godzilla pop culture idea is, and they see that movie and they're like, what is this?
Yeah, I think most people kind of think, if they think of black and white Godzilla, they think of Godzilla Raids Again.
Right.
Whereas Gojira is, there is a haunting scene with like a chorus of young girls that are singing at essentially what's like a funeral,
right,
for the people who've died in the initial attack. And it's heavy, and like the drama at the end is also, like dealing with Serizawa doing the oxygen destroyer,
right,
and the love triangle. There's actually compelling drama there.
I once saw they played Godzilla in a marathon of things at the Art Craft one time, and I could tell the screening was going odd because people weren't familiar with what that movie was.
Yeah.
Like, there was even I heard someone like, why is this so serious?
Right.
I heard someone say that, and I was like, because it's about thing like it's. Yeah, it was weird because I think they thought they all just start how they became.
Yeah, and it's Godzilla Raids Again, which comes out just 1 year later, is kind of not that great.
No.
It feels like a sequel. It feels kind of like a little bit, it's like, well, we can just cash in and Giant Monster is great. And
right.
But it does establish one really, really important thing, and that is Godzilla is really good when he has another monster to punch.
Yeah.
And Anguirus would end up becoming his buddy.
Oh, yeah. The one where they speak to each other.
Yeah.
They speak the same language.
Yeah.
They speak the same language.
Yeah, it's like, but we learn that if you take your knocks from Godzilla, he's going to be your friend in the end.
Right.
You're just going to have to let him beat you up, and then you become friends with him. Kind of like all my bullies.
Right. And Godzilla kind of sets tones for, there's all these other series, but it's like, Godzilla did that already? Because I would say the sequel, usually in a series, a sequel sets the tone for what everything else is, and the original ends up being some sort of outlier. To go to something like Saw, most of them are like Saw 2, not like Saw 1. Like other series have it like that as well, and that's what usually, like Lethal Weapon 2. That's what the Lethal Weapons that you think of is you watch Lethal Weapon 1, it's this dark movie, and the others are like more the buddy comedy. There's not comedy in the first one, but it's a lot more serious, darker movie than what the series standard is. But I think Godzilla is one of those that sets that in that way.
Yeah, I think so too, because like, and it's after Godzilla Raids Again, I mean, there wasn't another movie for another 7 years, and it allowed Toho to explore a couple of other ideas using Godzilla as kind of the template. So you got Rodan comes in, and that movie is also kind of heavy.
Yeah.
They have to kill mating Rodans. It's kind of sad at the end. But then, like, you also have Mothra, who comes along in the early 60s, and then Toho decided, we can do a really, really, like, A1, like, title fight kind of style. Yeah. It's like, the Americans got this King Kong character. We kind of like King Kong.
Right.
But let's bring him in on a bunch of balloons and drop him into the middle of a field, and let's just have he and Godzilla fight.
Right.
Now, what's kind of interesting about that is I think that's maybe the first time where even the Americans were thinking, oh, we really like this series. They liked the first two movies.
Right.
Which, by the way, they called the second movie Gigantus, the Fire Monster.
Of course.
Yeah. Anyway, but they were like, okay, well, and there was a long standing, like rumor that depending on the version of that King Kong versus Godzilla that you watched, if you watched the American Universal one, King Kong supposedly won. If you watched the original Toho one, Godzilla won. That's all. That's all BS. But it was the beginning of people really kind of engaging with it and really kind of starting to pick their favorites. And it was also kind of the beginning of these monsters can have a personality, right? Yeah. And I think about that in the greater scope of like monsters, right? Like you've got your Draculas, you got your Frankenstein monsters, you've got your Wolfman, you got all those characters, and it's like most of those characters don't actually have a great deal of personality to themselves,
right?
But like what makes, I think, and what usually sets aside characters like Godzilla or Gamera or King Kong is that you kind of get the impression that you can communicate with them in some way. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, later on in a later Godzilla movie, somebody tries to communicate with Godzilla, and that doesn't work. No. But he gets blasted pretty good. But with King Kong versus Godzilla, that began what most people think of Godzilla. And that's when you start getting into when people like really, it's like, oh, what are your favorite monster characters? And what are your favorite movies from that era? Because if we were to say, what's the best Godzilla movie? Well, it's going to be -1 or Shin Godzilla or the original Godzilla. But that's not usually your favorite.
Yeah.
So it's like, you get movies like the Mothra versus Godzilla or Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, that both of those were released in the same year.
Yeah.
And those are two of the most fun movies to watch of the series. And it really kind of creates this whole kind of evolving era of the creature where it's like it becomes a pop culture icon, and it really starts to kind of you start seeing the interest of like kids going to see these movies, and that's when the series gets wild.
Yeah.
Like your Son of Godzillas, your Godzilla versus the Smog Monster.
Restraint goes away. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good way of putting it. But no, I mean, in the Showa era, it's like those were the movies that I grew up on. I mean, they used to play on Channel 4 on Saturday afternoons all the time. And, I mean, it's like, it's the ones that like people make fun of like the mismatched dubbing, or like the the silliness of, oh, it's just a guy in a suit fighting a guy who's dressed up like a lobster. But you know what?
But it's awesome. It's an awesome guy in an awesome suit. fighting a monster.
When did you start watching Godzilla?
So Godzilla, I had like handily watched Godzilla movie. Like the first one I'd seen like a ton, and then I'd seen them in interesting ways, but not like been like fully like up to it. And then honestly, when the Criterion Collection set came out, I did a run of at my old podcast of just covering those. So I'm like, I'm going to watch them and record about them. And then the pandemic happened, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to finish these off and like see all of them, some of them for the first time and stuff. So I'm a relatively fresher fan of Godzilla with things, but I totally enjoyed that run. I mean, I wouldn't have finished if things were going south, or it would have taken a longer time, but I probably... Sure. Now, we were at home. I got it done pretty fast.
Right. Well, it's not like those movies take a lot of time to really...
Yeah. Like, I got to the point where, like, if there were a new one in the theater, I'd probably go check it out. That's where I was before that. But now I went back, and now I have, like, I have Mothra socks on.
Oh, here we go. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I've got swag now and stuff. Like, I'm on board hardcore. But I'm a relatively recent...
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because, like, growing up and until about 10 or 15 years ago, I mean, like, if you'd have said to somebody, it's like, oh, I'm a Godzilla fan, you might get made fun of a little bit.
What are you, 5? Like,
yeah, something like that. Yeah,
hold on to that childhood.
In a way, it's kind of like, it's like telling somebody while you're in your mid-20s that you still read comic books.
Right.
It was that kind of... But it's funny once those people who were a fan of those things as a kid kind of grow up and they kind of reevaluate these types of things. And I mean, the Showa era, those 60s and 70s Godzilla movies are part of the Criterion Collection.
Yeah.
I mean, that means they are legitimate pieces of film history now.
Yeah.
And it is much, I mean, like, yeah, Godzilla might be throwing rocks at Ebra, and Ebra's ping-ponging them back to him. But people like that?
Well, the thing, like, I think about those, even if you don't, maybe the story's not your cup of tea, maybe something, but those things are, like, excellent with, like, style,
yes,
costuming, music.
Oh, great!
There's
music.
so many just aesthetic, like aspects that they just are amazing at that totally give a vibe of that era, and then I want it to look of that era.
Yeah.
So like that's one thing I think where people are like, I'm like, but yeah, just kind of soak in what you're looking at, kind of maybe tune out like weird plot contrivances or whatever they're going through, but. Stylistically, it's awesome. Like I love, especially that Showa era.
Yeah,
that is like pop culture history, and just like you can see something from it, and some of it you might not even realize was from Godzilla till you see it, or you see things and you're like, oh, that's maybe where that came from. Or something
there's
that
pagoda that he constantly knocks over.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, in a way, it's kind of like a travel card, right? Like it's it's a travel magazine of Japan over the course of 60 years for the most part, because like you can see, like once they move into the 80s and you get into the 1984 Return of Godzilla movie, where, by the way. The American version of that's really bad. But like they've now built, because like before most of the Godzilla settings seemed to be kind of rural and kind of picturesque, but now they've kind of got like this growing, sprawling city, and it always. Like I always think about, like, because there's an image in my brain from that 1984 movie where he's standing next to a skyscraper and he's dwarfed by it.
Yeah,
and it's like it's impossible to think of, but like these, like that was trying to show that the Tokyo was now modernized, and it was beyond this kind of quaint, picturesque, rural, and then the monsters and the kind of. What's the word I'm looking for? Superstition. That's sometimes built into those.
Yeah.
And what they end up kind of doing later in the 2000s is kind of use some of those superstitions to kind of weave it into some of the movie, particularly with like Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah,
right?
Where it was like, you know, they're kind of possessing these different, or they have these different spirits possessing them, and it's just it's an amazing series to look at how something of a incredibly strange and unrealistic concept of a giant monster born of man's folly, to the kind of take from Blue Oyster Cult a little bit. That, you know, you have these giant monsters, but people want to kind of consider that and think about that in these different kind of cultural ways, and it's one of the things that as each era kind of reinvents Godzilla, they do kind of like try to soak the story in that. It's like, what can Godzilla become,
right,
that means something to Japan, and which as great as the American, like the legendary movies that have been coming out, the MonsterVerse doesn't quite encapsulate that essence quite the same way.
Right.
And that's, you know, and that's fine. I mean, it's when you're looking at those Japanese films, it is soaked in their tradition, in their, you know, in their
history, the moment.
And like, I mean, because remember, the first Godzilla movie came out less than a decade after their worst moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, it's amazing that they would even think to try to replicate those ideas and those concepts. But yeah, so whenever I talk about Godzilla, because, you know, what's kind of interesting about, and this is one thing that, well, I guess I'll get to this first, but like, it's kind of interesting how Godzilla has celebrated its anniversaries, because like in 1974, they did the Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, where it was like, oh, two Godzillas.
Yeah.
Until one skin fell off and it was awesome robot Godzilla. But
that's how it should be done.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I hope someday I come across myself and that other me skin falls off.
You're not the one that the skin falls off, and you're like, I thought all along I was a real man.
Yeah. God. Well, now I got other things to think about, Brandon. But anyway,
I can't remember past age 35.
But like, the big celebration was for the 50th anniversary of Final Wars. It's like, bring back as many monsters, as many bonkers ideas.
Yeah.
You got mutants, you've got aliens, you've got all of the
Matrix-inspired aliens.
Oh, God. Oh, yeah. I'd rather watch that than any of the Matrix movies.
Really? Okay. I'd have to think about it.
Yeah. But well, especially the sequels. I'll give you that. But no, but the 60th anniversary went to America. And like, the 70th anniversary got celebrated a year in advance.
Right,
so that the Americans had their sequel.
Right, yeah.
Because I don't know,
production was probably in 60 or 63, right? Or 53, sorry. You think? Was there any? No, it was all 50. Okay, so pre-planning.
I guess. But
the first thought.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you count the -1 color, then we got it.
Right. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, there we go.
But no, it's. I mean, maybe there's a different Godzilla calendar. Maybe it's a Godzilla calendar.
There you go.
It starts in November.
It's a different calendar. You know what? Yeah. There we go.
Anyway, but no, and you know, I am really glad that the series and all of the movies involved they don't have to be taken seriously. And you know, it's like, nobody asks for, you know, Godzilla's revenge to be taken seriously.
No.
But what we can do is we can watch it and have fun and say, oh, that was fun, and now I'm ready for the next one. What's after this? You know?
We go here.
And but anymore, it's like, that's why I've kind of liked the last couple of American ones too, where it's like, there's Hollow Earth, and and there are monsters inside that Hollow Earth that can pop up at any time, and yeah, there are ancient people who live in the Hollow Earth, and they know all of the monsters, and it's like,
yeah,
I like the kind of crazy. It doesn't have to be serious all the time. I'll take my Godzilla -1.
I'll tell you one of my very favorites, if not, it's competing for the top spot. That is an odd one. Is the Hedorah, the smog monster, because it stood out so much, and it had something to say with that, in my opinion. And
when you take LSD, people's heads turn into fish.
Well, two things to say.
Oh, okay.
No, I felt like Hedorah was Godzilla versus himself, because it was a man or human earth-created monster from waste.
Yeah.
Just like, Godzilla was, and now he was facing a current waste. And
it's just a big old sentient pile of crap.
Yeah. And it was weird and different, and it just stood out to me, and I enjoyed it.
Smothered that poor cat. in the crap. But anyway, no. So
if you go weird, you got Brandon's attention.
Yeah. And well, that brings me to the perfect place to ask the question.
Okay.
So it's like, what are some of your favorite movies and why?
In Godzilla?
Yes.
No.
Of Gamera.
Okay.
No.
Well, yeah. You're gonna lose me there. Like I said, Hedorah, the smog monster. That is top one. I liked Destroy All Monsters, of course. That's a good one. The Mechagodzillas.
Yeah.
In the Showa era, both work for me quite well.
Because the second one of that is also a weirdo one.
It is a weirdo one, but it was enough for me. It worked. Anything with King Ghidorah, like his first one, was it the Astro Monster?
Ghidorah, three-headed monster.
Three-headed monster, yeah.
Astro Monster came later.
Both those. So Showa era, good. When they get the Heisei era, the one with King Ghidorah, the Terminator thing.
You now can tell your son about this, Lieutenant. Spielberg.
Spielberg, yes. That one's so crazy, and I
love it. Yeah,
I love those movies because they're like, what movies do we like, and how do we make a Godzilla version out of it with those? And I mean, there's ones, there's like an Indiana Jones type adventure. I do like just for Godzilla vs. Destroyer. Decently.
Oh yeah,
that's a good one.
Where he's basically fighting the devil.
How far do you go? He's got to. Who's gonna take over? And we were talking earlier. Final Wars stands out for me because I felt like it was anime turned live action, through the characters and everything like that. And it really was just a fun, throw everything in.
Yeah, I mean, it's the culmination of 50 years, and and it's like, what did we inspire, and what can we take back? And what can we use from our own history? And that's, so of all of the different...
Mechagodzilla 2, totally Top Gun. That is absolutely,
Yeah. So of all of those monsters that he fought... Now, I mean, obviously, Godzilla is, he's pretty good. He's the king of the monsters.
Gang.
But... what monster would you say is your favorite that has also appeared in them?
The Hedorah, for sure, and King Ghidorah. And then I liked, and now I'm blanking, in Destroy All Monsters, there's this snake dragon, and Manda. Yeah. I wanted more
Natragon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted more Manda. I like that design. I like what it was doing, but there we go.
And that was the really cool thing about the Final Wars also, is that it brought back the Gatango, which was also from Atragon, and then it was the one that was chasing after Manda at the beginning of that.
Right.
So again, I mean, it was borrowing from other movies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so outside of the top tier, the serious top tier, Godzilla movies, the first Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Because I freaking love Mechagodzilla. That original alien Mechagodzilla, the way you could spin his head around, and you rip off the head in the second movie, and he still can go. It's like, that's great stuff. But also, I always like those early team ups with Rodan and Mothra. where they're talking to each other also through the twins.
Through the twins.
Yeah, and so it's like that. When they scold Godzilla for having a dirty mouth. It's like, of course he does.
It's funny. So I forgot Mechagodzilla. I remember I made Jessica Alsman watch that one time. And when Mechagodzilla goes crazy, she's like, Control-Alt-Delete, Control-Alt-Delete, Control-Alt-Delete. It's like my favorite thing. One of my favorite things she's ever told me. But she's like, Control-Delete.
I've always been a big fan of Anguirus also because he's like his little buddy.
Yeah.
And there's that when he runs right into see, I knew I was gonna when you
return your manuals back to page 1.
It was in the Godzilla versus Gigan, and like I think Anguirus is the first one to try to go up against them, and he runs right into the buzzsaw in Gigan's stomach.
Oh yeah,
and it bleeds all over the camp. It's like, this movie's for kids, but we're going hard.
Yeah. Well, hey, Beneath the Planet of the Apes ends with a headshot.
That is true.
In the final couple minutes with a splatter on the wall.
Yep. Yes, he does. Yeah.
Yeah, those G ratings, those PG ratings, they just like, for kids? We don't need to watch that one.
Yeah. I mean, they need to relax those anyway these days.
Right. Yeah.
Kids need to cut their teeth on the harder stuff.
Right.
But no. Did you watch the Netflix anime?
I did not. Anime is a tough thing for me. I try. I always try. I always attempt. I
thought they were.
People here at PopCon know it's not my wheelhouse.
This is the perfect place for you to.
It's been a very clear thing over years. Allison's anime art. Every time I go, you watch any anime recently, Brandon? No.
No, I'm still.
And they're like, you seen One Piece? Well, I'll check out how many, 1,000 episodes? Like, no. Where do I have time?
I just it's like, I'll just rewatch Cowboy Bebop.
Good to you people that like got through it all and love it. I want to be a fan of. So I watched the Chainsaw Head one last year. I liked it. It was my cup of tea. I gave away some plushies of it, and I didn't know what I was giving away. So after PopCon, I was like, all right, let's check this out. And I
remember that was the poorly
described movies tomorrow at 3. Come to it. Win prizes.
There you go.
It's good stuff.
That's
very fun
for
game.
People in the future, hop in your time machines, come back here a couple of weeks.
Right. Yeah, when they hear it on Just Record.
Fine. Before we kind of kick it over to the crowd, if anybody would like to come up and talk about their favorite things about Godzilla.
Oh, yeah.
There are a couple of other fun things I do want to mention. And that is, of course, also while I was growing up, we had Godzuki from Hanna-Barbera, and I kept wanting Godzilla to kill the people that was always hanging out with Godzuki.
Oh, wow.
I grew up on R-rated movies, Brent.
Okay, yeah.
So,
all right, yeah.
That was
You want to dive into that a little more, Jim? Let's...
Maybe, do we have any time for tomorrow for Jeff's psychiatry?
It's back there. And
all right.
All right. Yep.
All right, yeah.
Doctor on hand.
But also, you could pick up the Marvel series or the Dark Horse series.
Okay.
Like in the Marvel ones, like S.H.I.E.L.D. fought Godzilla. The Avengers fought Godzilla. And that, I want to see that adapted.
Did you want them all to die too?
No.
Okay.
No, you can't. No. I was a big Thor fan.
All right. Godzilla only goes to Thor, and that's it. That's where it stops.
Pretty
all
much.
Right.
But Godzilla, that Marvel version, still kind of exists in the Marvel universe in the form of American Kaiju, a.k.a. Todzilla.
Todzilla. There we go.
He recently showed up in one of the Avengers series a few years ago. So, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
Go get those. I'm sure you can find them for about $1 someplace over there.
There we go.
And the Marvel, the original 24 issues of the Marvel series is about to get an omnibus. So, yeah, go check that out. It's fun stuff. But we also had appearances in One Crazy Summer, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. There was a Snickers commercial a few years ago where he's jet skiing. That's fun.
Oh, yeah,
The best thing ever is when he played one-on-one with the round mound of rebound, Charles Barkley.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember.
That was so good that Dark Horse is like, yes, we need a comic book of this ASAP. And Godzilla,
Sir
got to work.
Charles. Yeah. Gotcha. Cool.
slam dunking stuff, wearing big old shoes.
Big old shoes.
It was great. All right, so should we ask some people to share some Godzilla fun?
All right, anybody want to come up and share?
Step up and talk about their favorite Godzilla things?
Come on up.
Come on up.
So, you want to let him take 3, you go.
Yeah. Am I still? Okay, yes. All right.
You can walk out a little bit if you want. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so there we go. And yeah, what's your name? What's your name?
Chase.
Chase.
Hi, Chase.
Is this your first time at PopCon?
No, about a third, fourth time.
Cool. Is this the first time you come over to the live podcast stage?
It actually is, yeah.
Wow, awesome.
all right.
Hey,
We
way to go. Yeah.
All right, awesome.
Yeah. Yep. Saw this friend over there, pointed out the panel, wanted
Nice.
to come by. Yep,
All right.
sounded like a lot of fun.
All right, cool.
First of all, got to agree on Final Wars probably being one of the top best. I think really I can point out on one hand how many of the movies I really like the human characters in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Final Wars is one of those movies. Where
Yeah.
it's like
Don Fry goes a long way for that.
hell yes. But yeah, every single character in that movie I love to death. The Sergeant Slaughter guy with the katana at the end. Oh my god, it's so sick. But yeah, -1's awesome. In terms of all the rest are the serious ones, obviously. But
Sure.
yeah, I absolutely love it. I'm on the same boat. -1 was outstanding.
Yeah.
I think I even I was close to crying.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Seriously, and that is so weird to say for a Godzilla movie.
Yeah. It was really. There was a lot of hyperbole of that movie going around when it came out, and it was like, well, how else do you describe it? You know, it was like that. It was weird because it was like, I'm not overhyping it, promise.
Right. Yeah.
And then you see it, and you're like, oh, I thought I was going to be underwhelmed, but it's you just gotta see it.
Well, quick shout out to my Film Seizure co-host, Chuck Moore, Jason Oliver. Chuck Moore also, like me, grew up on the early Godzilla movies that used to play on TV all the time. But I came back from that, I'm like, guys, and they're gonna know that I'm gonna be like, it's good because I'm the monster guy. But
Same way with my friends.
yeah, but I was like, no, seriously, it's probably the best one ever, and it's gonna be hard to top going forward.
And it really
one by one, they went and saw it themselves, and they're like, yeah. And it ended up on all 3 of our best of 2024 lists.
Yeah, it was on my and it was crazy because I went on a Saturday afternoon here in Indianapolis, and it's like, oh, full theater.
Yeah.
And everybody after it, normally in Indiana theater, just okay, we're gonna go home now. Everybody was kind of buzzing after it, and it was it was like, wow, that was crazy. You don't get that often when you're in the Midwest and stuff.
Oh, and the first time that he used his breath and blew up that ship, the theater, you were there. It went nuts. Yeah.
I mean, there are great set pieces all together in there. They're like all timers.
Yeah.
From anything.
But so Chase, right? Okay, Chase. What is your favorite creature character to show up in the Godzilla movies?
Good question.
I mean, I'm going to assume Godzilla would be number 1, but so aside from Godzilla.
Yeah, that's a fair bet. Oh my god. Wow. I got a soft spot for Baragon.
Okay, yeah.
In Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah.
Okay.
Because he only appears maybe a couple of times in that movie, and he gets his.
Yeah, he gets fried pretty quickly. By the way, anybody who ever goes to G-Fest this summer in Chicago, the actress who played Baragon is there as one of the special guests, and she's super nervous about going. It's really, really kind of cute and kind of fuzzy, warm and fuzzy that she's very, very nervous about going to a big convention. Also, look up the video of her the onset audio of her roaring in the suit with the action. It's great. It's fantastic. It's adorable. I also have to kind of. What do you think of the Shin Godzilla early, like the googly-eyed guy?
I'm a big fan of body horror stuff already.
Yeah.
So that was my jam. I love that stuff so much. So
Spouting horrible blood from its gills. Yeah.
I have a distinct memory for that one because my friend, we just saw it on a whim because we were like, oh, hey, it's playing in theaters. He went and there was an ad right before the movie started playing. He didn't see any trailer beforehand, and he just looked over to me. He's like, "That's what he looks like in this." It was insane, but yeah, like every single form in that movie, it helped with like the overwhelming sense of like doom, and yeah. That soundtrack for that one is also awesome.
Yeah.
Remember, we all thought Shin Godzilla was so great, and then -1 comes out. It's like,
yeah,
you were good too, Shin Godzilla. You were good too.
You were good. You were good. But
that was pretty good what you did back then.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go hang with -1 now. I know it's awkward. I used to hold you up really high too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but no, appreciate you coming here. Appreciate you coming to check out the show.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks, Chase.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to?
Here we go.
Here we go. And now, what's your name?
My name is John. I am a huge fan of Godzilla, and I just want to start with my favorite monster because I actually got a question for two of you, and it involves your favorite movie. So,
okay.
So my favorite monster is Gigan. I don't know why I like the belief in space, but
now, did you like the upgrades in Final Wars?
I kind of did. I mean, it was weird with the chainsaw hands, but I did kind of like him. So
I mean, he is kind of an alien robot thing
with the visor and
who flies with just weird tiny wings. He works, and you know what? He's
got Cyclops eyes.
He does.
Yeah.
He's like a ringer that the monster, like the aliens, bring in when they're like, "Crap, our main creation's losing. We need to bring in a ringer, and he'll work for cheap. He'll work for scale, literally."
I always said he looked like
underground people bring him in. It's like we're gonna call up our buddies from not the surface, from way out there on another surface.
I always thought he looked like if the winner of a kids contest to design a cool new Godzilla.
Well, that was Jet Jaguar.
Well, yeah, there was that too. But that's a
All right, so here's my question. So in the 90s, we got Godzilla with Matthew Broderick.
Yes.
Oh, we weren't going to bring that up here.
No, it's fine. We're celebrating the whole breadth.
All right.
And they're trying to do a realistic, like, yes, it's a giant monster, but, like, there's no radiation breath. It's supposed to be a realistic us versus a giant kaiju movie. And I think it's kind of bad. I mean, I'm not really going to ask people.
I don't think that's a hot take.
Yeah. So
I will clear that air right here. Yeah.
I mean, anybody listening to this, the recording that comes out later, you can send to filmseizure@gmail.com and say, "Attention, John," and then yell at him, and I'll make sure that John gets it.
But I haven't gotten to the second half of my question.
Yeah.
Okay, so but Godzilla -1, with the exception of the fact that it's a giant regenerating kaiju, it also tries to do a mostly like realistic take of humans fighting a giant monster.
Absolutely.
Do you think that it's actually really hard to tell a story like that? Because clearly with -1, we got an amazing story. But do you think there's a lot of challenges with trying to do realistic, or do we have to have giant, like, Destroyer X and other things to take him on?
No, that's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, I think this kind of goes back a little bit to like the idea of like the superstitions and some of the cultural stuff, right? Because like when they start off on Odo Island, there's already the talk of something is here, like some sort of dinosaur-like creature, and I think that opening scene does a lot of legwork to set up the emotional tone and then the realistic that there's a monster here. Now, don't worry about exactly where it comes from, and I hope there is no -2 where they end up telling the backstory of it. So, no, it does a lot of legwork to set that stuff up, and don't worry about it. There is a monster there. But where that movie excels is the actual, like, the post-war stuff, dealing with that interpersonal and intrapersonal struggle that the characters have after the war. And then for it to realize it's like, oh no, your horrors are only just beginning. Whereas Roland Emmerich was, I kind of like Jurassic Park. Let's do more of that in the city.
Definitely, that's what I was going to say. That's the influence more than Godzilla itself.
So I don't think it's that difficult to tell an actual real grounded story, because Shin Godzilla does a really good job of that too, because it's like, how does the government absolutely drop the ball and fail at dealing with a problem that it cannot see coming? And even if it could see coming, how are they going to screw it up and, be like the Mystery Science Theater song, the reason nothing works?
It was very interesting, like the different approaches, wherein the Emmerich one, they're like, oh, we've got the Navy and the Marines and the Army, we're going to take it on. And then in -1, it's, the U.S. says they're not coming to help you, so good luck, old soldiers.
Well, and I think that also does a lot of really good, too, because it's saying, this is the will of the Japanese people to keep themselves going after their darkest hour, right? And that was really, really important. I mean, like, might be a tad bit of a hot take in an open space, but the bomb was bad. I mean, it did really bad things in 1945, and they had to rebuild themselves, and that's really the story of -1. And I think that's where it's like, no, it's good to show that it's like, we're here to protect you, but we're more interested in Russia, so the will of the people have to kind of save the day in the long run. But no, I mean, that's a great question.
All right.
I think we might have, if anybody else in a couple of minutes.
Oh, okay. We have time for one more.
Hi, everybody. My name's Chris Dunn. I too am a Godzilla addict.
Hi, Chris.
So this is like, I'll go into my favorite monster besides Godzilla.
I know what this is.
Which is Biollante.
Yes.
Oh,
it's such a strange monster.
Yes, I like Biollante, yeah.
It's just such a strange monster. And then, like, on top of that, it kind of goes into back to the old, like, when Godzilla was created, that he's a monster, he's nuclear fire. Whereas Biollante, and they even go into the IDW comics of, that's kind of like nature trying to balance itself out. And one of the, like, more subtle things that I like about that movie, and it's just a random scene in the very beginning where it's like the two nurses, and they have like a psychic school, and they go in and they're like, oh yeah, these kids keep having the same dream over and over again.
Right.
And it's the scene where when they ask them to show them the pictures, it's all Godzilla destroying Japan. And it's just kind of like that undertone of like, holy crap, he's showing up again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because there is kind of like, I mean, in a way, it's like that's not only doing like a kind of a different like science fiction, but it's also doing the like a horror element with that too. And sometimes, that's one of the great things about Godzilla is that it can be fun, it can be weird, and it can be really scary.
Mm-hmm.
And if it hits a good balance of all those, because that is all three, it's fun, it's weird, and it's unsettling. That is one that I'm glad that over the last 10, 15 years I've gotten a lot more love.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the most hard ones to find on home media as well.
Criterion needs to step up and come in with the Heisei and the Millennium. And
there's a secondhand Blu-ray store that sells it if you're looking for it. I don't know if it's got a website. Then it's like a bootlegger site. I don't know if it's legal, but you can get it and it works. Confirmed.
Is it actually secondhand?
I think they're called like secondhand something.
Yep.
That's their
I know you're talking about. No, they do good work.
Yeah.
So.
And as much as like we all think that Shin Godzilla's early forms are really terrifying, I think everyone can agree that while it is scary, it's not as scary as Manila, who is absolutely terrifying.
Oh yeah. So poor little Minya. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, he's that first one is a little derpy, isn't he?
Totally.
I think that is an excellent place to wrap up this episode. Thank you, Brandon, for joining me.
You're welcome, Geoff.
Thank you for the people who participated, who came to listen. I hope you had a good time. And happy birthday, Godzilla. 70. He's getting up there.
Looking still young, big guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot more in him. So, so check out Film Seizure. You can find us at Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, Mastodon.
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 Still on there, Geoff? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. You can also find Film Seizure, a whole bunch of podcast providers. Just go to filmseizure.com. That's a great place to find where you can follow us and subscribe to us. Like I said, Film Seizure with myself, Jason Oliver, and Chuck Moore. That's every Wednesday morning. New episodes of Monster Mondays happen Monday afternoon. And then I also have my own website called bmovieenema.com. You can read new reviews every Friday morning. And currently, this is week number 2 of season 5 of B-Movie Enema, the series.
Oh, that's right, yep.
So you can watch that on places like YouTube, Vimeo, B-Movie Enema website. There's also a B-Movie Enema Roku app. And there's a Roku app called Other Worlds TV where I show up on Saturday evenings with other hosted movies.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, Geoff. And thank you, everyone who came to Godzilla. And we're going to take a 10-minute break.
All right, and that was my For the Love of Godzilla live podcast at the PopCon Indy live podcast stage on April 27th, 2024, just about 3 weeks ago or so now. Hope you enjoyed that. It was fun to do. It was something that is not like Monster Mondays typically. I like to be a little bit more scripted with Monster Monday so I can kind of keep my thoughts a little bit more straightforward thinking and kind of, keep these things, if possible, under 30 minutes. Sometimes, mostly between 20 and 30 minutes are these episodes. So hopefully you did enjoy that. As I said, on the stage there, you can always follow Film Seizure at various places where you can find us on social media like Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Mastodon, and Blue Sky. You can also subscribe to the podcast at various places where you can find podcasts provided to you, like Google, Apple, SoundCloud, various other places as well. So you can go to the website, filmseizure.com, to find those things. But upcoming here next time on a regular episode of Monster Mondays, while it is a regular episode, I guess you could say it is a little bit of a different type of episode. I am going to be looking at the classic silent film The Man Who Laughs, which turned out to be quite an influential little movie that stars Conrad Veidt. So hopefully you will tune in for that next week. So with the Godzilla movies, there are only a handful remaining, and we'll be getting into those final ones probably a little bit later in the year or at the start of next year. But yeah, it's kind of hard to believe we're kind of getting to the end of one of the major stars of this show, that being the Big G himself. So, from Little G, me, Geoff, I hope you enjoyed this. I look forward to doing more stuff like this in the future with PopCon, hopefully. And I hope you do enjoy everything that we bring to you. So until next week, stay spooky.